If y'all remember from last week, we got into this series called Getting Healthy, right? And I'm just going to recap just a little bit, but we said that it's our goal to recognize and identify some areas in our lives that are simply not healthy and to get them on track to where they are, right? We noted that when we're involved in something that isn't healthy, it's common that we experience a lot of ups and downs, a lot of good times, a lot of bad times, roller coaster effect, kind of, that inconsistency in our life that can just be super, super draining. Therefore, we said that consistency is key for us to pursue spiritual health. And we want consistency in how and who we live our lives for. Y'all remember this? Yeah, okay. We talked about the group of people that find themselves kind of teetering on both. I love Jesus, but I love having my foot in the world. So one foot in the world, one foot in Jesus, kind of living that double lifestyle, right? And I gave the illustration of lemonade and chocolate milk, okay? We said that both can have desirable attributes, but when we mix them, that it ruins them completely. Much like if you mix sinful habits and godly living together, that the sin will find a way to pollute and ruin your relationship with God. So we said this, a very impactful way for us to step towards getting healthy is to get sin out of our lives. Is that ringing a bell for some of you guys? Yes, okay, that's exactly what we were talking about. We were talking about getting sin out of our lives, not living a double life, but being all in for Jesus, okay? And this is going to be week 2 of the same series. Today we're going to look at another important area when it comes to getting healthy, all right? I want you guys to turn, if you have your Bibles, to Romans 12. We're going to look at verse 2. I got the New Living Translation up here for you guys. It says, don't copy the behavior and customs of the world. How many of you know that's a lot about what we talked about last week? Do not copy the behavior and customs of the world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you'll learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Guys, another crucial key to getting healthy is through changing the way you think. All right, this is one of my favorite subjects to speak on for many reasons, but one of which is because it always makes me kind of self-evaluate. So whenever I talk about thought life, it's like, man, what have I been thinking about? What have I been focusing on? What does my thought life look like? Does it look like something healthy or does it not? All right? Our minds are one of the most amazing things that we'll ever encounter on this earth. It's one of those things that, man, when I think about the human brain, I'm just like, man, there has to be a God. There has to be a creator. Because how else do you take a bunch of fat, salt, carbs, and water, put it together, and somehow it has this crazy ability to communicate logic, creativity, desire, responses, navigate challenges, all things that our brain can do. And it's fat, water, salt, and carbs. It's crazy. And it's scientifically proven that as we think, we change the physical nature of our brain. Okay? So depending on what you guys think on, good, bad, positive, negative, it has a physical effect on your brain. Did you guys know that? Yeah. Physically, your brain itself, not just like in La La Land, like it physically changes based on what you guys allow yourselves to think about. Something else that we know about the brain is that it is a tool, okay? It is to work to our benefit. Hear me on this. The brain is not us, but rather works for us, okay? You are not your mind. Your mind does not embody you as a being, okay? You, me, everyone in here, you are a spirit, okay? You live in a body and you possess a mind, okay? That's important to know because nothing will limit you guys more as a Christian than an untrained mind. Your mind will get in the way more than probably anything else that you encounter. So once you choose to live that Christian life, man, getting your mind lined up, your thought life lined up with the Word of God is so crucial because it's one of the things that can trip you up the most. Your mind is to be a tool for you as a person. Now, the reason that we have to train, guard, renew our mind is because not all thoughts come from God. Okay? If they did, then we know that every thought would be positive, holy, true, uplifting, encouraging. It would be good, positive, right? But I bet you there's not a single person in here that every single one of your thoughts look like that. Therefore, we know that not every thought comes from God. Just being honest, a lot of thoughts can come from our enemy. If you guys don't know it, we do have an enemy, okay? Thoughts that you have, it doesn't mean that it's just you thinking it up. There's an enemy out there that wants you. So he wants you thinking horrible thoughts. So we have to do some work to get our minds on the right things and not on wrong thinking. A couple quotes as we get into this that I want to share. Maybe you guys have heard them. I think they're vitally important that we revisit them. The first one is this: the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose. When it comes to your thought life, what you think about on a daily basis, you guys have a choice. You're not controlled by your mind. You can't say, oh, my mind just is always on these all random things. You have a choice whether you stay there, whether you continually to think on those things. They don't have you, you have them. The mind is a tool for you. You have the option to choose another thought, one thought over another. Another quote is, you cannot have a positive life when you have a negative mind. You cannot have a positive life if you have a negative mind. How many want a positive life? Every single one of us. A lot of us, though, are probably struggling to some degree with negative minds. So we got to do some things to get healthy. Thoughts are extremely powerful. This is nothing new, right? We've known this for generations. Thoughts alone can have a major effect on your physical body. We know this because let's take, for example, if you guys had to give a speech, okay? Who's loves public speaking? Okay, right, 4 of us, okay? Vast majority of people do not like public speaking. If I told you, hey, you have to give a speech to your class, not just your class, your entire school, it's going to be on such and such a date, you're going to be super nervous. I would be super nervous, okay? And we know that just because we have thoughts of how bad it could go, or what if I do this, what if this happens, thoughts will begin to make you have physical appearances of what's going on the inside. You might start sweating. You might get stomachs in a knot. You might lose your appetite. You might not be able to sleep. Your hands might shake. Okay, the first time I ever preached a message, my hands shook like crazy. Okay, your voice might tremble. All rooting from your thoughts has a big effect on your body. Now, though that shows very clearly that our thoughts can affect us physically, oftentimes thoughts don't really present themselves a whole lot on the outside. For example, let's talk about depressing thoughts, okay? We can have depressing thoughts and they don't necessarily, everybody else around us might not have any idea that we're dealing with them. Why? Well, when it comes to the speech, there's a deadline, okay? There's a time when we're going to have to give the speech, and the second that speech is over, not nervous. It's done, it's over, all feelings, stomach's no longer in a knot. Why? It's done. There's nothing to be nervous about anymore. But when it comes to depressing thoughts that we deal with on a daily basis, there's no end game in sight. Okay, so because you don't know that there's a deadline, because there isn't a deadline for you, you learn to cope. You learn to deal with it. And so therefore, you're struggling with these depressing thoughts way longer than you're supposed to. Remember, we're supposed to choose one thought over another, but we're entertaining these negative thoughts way longer than we're supposed to because they don't always show on the outside. It's thoughts that can talk you out of trying out for the team. It's thoughts that can stop you from accepting a solo, thoughts that can stop you from accepting genuine encouragement. How many of you guys in here, you've been given a compliment, and on the inside you're like, oh no, they're lying. Come on, be honest. Yes, every single one of us are like, oh, you're so pretty. No, they're lying, I ain't that pretty. Oh, you're so good at that, you lying. I know a million people that are better, and you even say it like, oh no, I know tons of people that are better than me at it. A lot of us are terrible at taking compliments. Thoughts will stop you from accepting genuine encouragement. Thoughts can stop you from trying new things. They can stop you from moving past hurtful experiences. Thoughts can stop you from forgiving people, which, as we've talked about before, it only harms you. It's not harming the other person. Thoughts can stop you from spending time with God. Man, I should probably read my Bible. Ooh, I don't even know if I'll hear from God today, so I'm going to go watch TikTok instead. It happens. Thoughts can stop you from spending time with God. They're powerful. And I think it's such a valid question right now to ask ourselves, everybody in here, what have you been thinking about? What has been on your mind? If you had to look back on the day and been like, man, I spent a lot of time, majority of my time thinking on what? The weird thing is for a lot of people in here, it would probably be something negative, something hard, something we're struggling with. What have you been thinking about? What's been on your mind? How many, if you ask the person sitting next to you and you're like, hey, tell me what the majority of your thoughts were today. Like, lay them all out for me. Let me hear them. Say them out loud. It would probably break your heart if they gave you an honest response. What if that person's you? Like, what if your response would break their hearts because of what you're struggling with in your thought life on a daily basis? If we skim through your average day thought life, would it be humiliating and sad, or would it be uplifting? Would it be encouraging? Would it be admirable? As we're talking about getting healthy, thought life is a big thing that's going to affect how we feel on the inside. It's going to affect our day on a daily basis. What we're thinking has a great effect on us. When I was reading my Bible yesterday, I was about to start working on the sermon, but I was just reading the Bible, and I was looking in Joel. And it's just random verses, okay? But it talked about how boys were being offered as payment for time with a prostitute, okay? In other words, it was saying like, hey, like, spend time with me and I'll give you my son as a slave, as a servant, and take him. Messed up, right? And then I kept reading, and it said that a girl was sold for money to buy wine with. I want to get drunk so bad, I'll sell you my daughter. That was happening. Horrible things were happening. Guys, horrible things were happening then. Horrible things are happening now. And what's wild is, like, we don't necessarily think about it all that much, but all over the world, people are being sold for things of less value than wine. People are being taken, sold, slaves. That's happening all over the place. And it just really got me thinking how blessed we are. You know, we live in an incredible country, and it's not without its flaws. It's not perfect. It really isn't. No country is. But man, I don't have to wake up every day and spend a lot of time worrying that somebody's going to take my wife, that somebody's going to take my niece, that somebody's going to take my sisters. Like, that's not really on my mind because we live in America. But that's happening all over the world. And it was happening in the Bible times. It's crazy how good we have it here in America. Crazy good. And yet, even so, for many of us, we are drowning in negative thoughts. Even with as good as we have it, everybody in this room, y'all got clothes on? Y'all had a meal at some point today? Like, we've got it so good. You all have freedom to be in a church. We have it so good. And yet, we're the very ones that can be struggling and drowning in negative thoughts. I think that's so wild. Now, a negative thought's going to happen, okay? I'm not up here saying, do this and you'll never have a negative thought the rest of your life, okay? That's not what I'm saying, because look, situations can provoke negative thoughts, okay? For instance, maybe dad doesn't think you're worth spending time with, okay? I get it. I understand why that would promote a negative thought in your mind. I understand why you would have that negative thought. That makes sense to me. Crazy situation. Maybe kids at school, they realize that you're kind of different, and they exploit that, and they make it very, very public so everyone can see and everyone can laugh. Man, I get it. I see how that can make a negative thought pop into your head, okay? Also, we have an enemy. His name is Satan. He will present thoughts and ideas to you that are harmful. It makes sense to me that you would have a negative thought. But here's my point. Because there's a gigantic difference between having a thought, there's a huge difference between having just a thought like that the enemy would present and dwelling on the thought. Night and day difference. Those are two completely different things. Having a negative thought is normal. It happens. Dwelling on the negative thought, that is not normal. That is not normal. Dwelling on it means to remain there, to chew on it, to mull it over, to expound on it a little bit. So when you have that negative thought, man, they would never like me. And then you're just like, yeah, they never like me because of this, and well, they probably never like me because of that, and I don't even like me because of this. And like you just start dwelling on it, and it becomes bigger and bigger in your mind. There's a big difference between having a thought and dwelling on a thought. You can have a thought, but dwelling on the thought is kind of like experiencing it. You can have a thought and get rid of it right away, or you can experience it and let it affect you. Guys, we need to realize something. I want every one of you, if you're taking notes, to write this down. If you don't take anything from me today, I want you to walk out with this. Super simple. Thoughts reproduce thoughts. Thoughts reproduce thoughts, okay? In other words, they multiply themselves. And let me be honest, quickly. Thoughts will multiply themselves very quickly when given attention. Now, if a giraffe reproduces, what do you get? A giraffe, okay? If a moose reproduces, what do you get? A moose. A grapefruit reproduces through seeds. What do you get? More grapefruits, okay? Well, if thoughts reproduce, then negative thoughts produce more negative thoughts. Positive thoughts reproduce positive thoughts. Are you guys starting to catch on why allowing a negative thought to stay there is really powerful? Because it's going to multiply very quickly, and your head's just going to fill and fill and fill with negativity. Not fun. Not healthy. I don't want that for any of you. We should be able to go through our day with positive thinking. We can see this, for example, if, let's say you're looking in the mirror and you see that flaw. I thought I had a flaw, right? So you guys see this big cut? Okay, so I had a big old mole. It bugged me. It like you touched it wrong, it would bleed easy. So I was like, I got to get rid of this mole. Okay, so now I have a big scar instead. But anyways, we can be looking in the mirror and be like, ooh, huge mole, not good. And it's not usual that leads to a good thought. Usually it leads to another one. Ooh, wrinkles under my eyes. Ooh, this. Ooh, I'm not as tan as I want to be. Ooh, my hair color, it's not looking good. Haven't been there in a while. Like we go down this path. Why? Negative thoughts reproduce negative thoughts. We start going down these really weird trails unless we make a change. Throw up Romans 12:2 again. Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Guys, we're seeing a lot of messed up stuff these days. A lot of stuff we're encountering at schools. People do I just talked about a number of instances of some really crazy stuff going around on other parts of the world. In our own world, we got people thinking they're cats. Guys, stuff is getting really bad. For you to believe that you're a cat, like, how does that happen, Brayden? How does it? I really believe that a lot of it comes from beginning as a thought. You don't just wake up one day and go, I'm a cat. No, you have a thought. And then you dwell on that thought. And you mull over that thought, and you come to the conclusion that that thought is truth. And suddenly you've got some really weird beliefs. If you're convinced that anything that this thing comes up with, just whatever it gives me is truth, then be prepared to start believing some pretty janky things. If you believe that this mind is the Lord of your life, whatever it says, that must be what I am, that must be what I feel, that must be what I believe. No. Like I said, there's an enemy. He's going to be lying. He's going to give thoughts. There's going to be negative thoughts. There's going to be positive thoughts. Just because your mind comes up in your mind doesn't mean that it's truth. Doesn't mean that it's accurate. Thoughts are powerful, but they're not always accurate. Do you have that picture? Is there a picture on there that I threw? Will you throw that up? Okay. Check this out with me for a second. Somebody tell me something that you notice in this picture. There's a baby. Broken structures. Chaos. What else? He's got boots on. Sad? Anybody else? Yeah, there's a lot going on in this picture. But I think it's funny how, we're so instantly drawn to the negative going on here. The chaos. The broken building materials. He's sad. Okay? We're really drawn to the negative. But honestly, if we took a second and we looked at this, there's a lot of good going on here. For example, I noticed that the boy is standing, which means he's alive. That's something good. I noticed he's got 2 boots, pants, and a shirt. The man's clothed. I think that's a good thing. I look in the background and I see people walking, digging through there. That means he's not alone. So see, there's just situations we naturally immediately look at the negative, but really there's positive going on. And that's true about a lot of our situations. We're so drawn. we naturally zero in on the negative going on in that situation. But I'm telling you, if you took some time, you could probably find some positive. But our minds are just kind of bent towards going to the negative because we're kind of used to doing that. Y'all get what I'm saying? Guys, God is concerned. You can take that picture down. I'm done with it. God is concerned with what you think about. He's aware of the power of our thinking. God is aware that negative thinking is evidence that we're not thinking Christ-like thoughts. God is aware that negative thoughts are easy to get stuck on. God is aware that thoughts lead to actions. Therefore, wrong thinking will lead to wrong choices. And so this is where God did something really cool, and he gave us an example sheet, and it's one of our core verses for this year at youth. Go ahead and throw up Philippians 4:8. You guys have seen this before. It says, finally, believers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, worthy of respect, whatever is right and confirmed by God's word, whatever is pure and wholesome, whatever is lovely and brings peace, whatever is admirable, of good repute, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think continually on these things. Center your mind on them and implant them in your heart. Guys, look at those last two sentences. Think continually on these things. God's aware that we're going to be drawn to think about some other things. He's saying, hey, get your mind healthy. Think on these kinds of things. Center your mind on them. He's giving you instructions. Center your mind. You focus on it. That means that your thoughts are your choice. They are your decision if you're going to continue thinking about them or if you're going to replace them, okay? When you think thoughts about yourself, he's saying let them look like this. Guys, when you think thoughts about yourself, let them be lovely, let them be admirable, let them be wholesome, let them be pure. Those things are in you. Sometimes we don't see them in ourselves, but those traits, those attributes, those things we're supposed to think on, they're in us. They're on the inside of us. Every single one in here. We're out of time, but we're going to keep talking about this subject next week because I think there's a big, kind of that big question of, okay, how? You say it's my choice. It doesn't feel like my choice. Guys, I'm an overthinker. I'm probably the biggest overthinker in this room. Overthink, overanalyze, you name it. And so shutting my mind off can be really, really hard, but I promise you it's doable. And when it comes to having a negative mindset and feeling really unhealthy when it comes to your thought life, there's a way to change that. And we're going to talk about that a lot more next week.